and welcome to our podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Max. Today, we're talking about something really useful: how to use English in academic writing.
Yes, Max, academic writing is a bit different from everyday English. It's formal and clear, and most importantly, it's used to share ideas and knowledge.
That's right. If you're studying or planning to study, you'll need academic writing skills. So, let's get started by talking about the basics.
The first thing to know is that academic writing uses complete sentences. For example, instead of saying, "need help," you should say, "I need help with this topic."
Yes, always write full sentences. Also, avoid using contractions like don't or can't. Instead, write do not and cannot. It sounds more formal and professional.
Another important thing is vocabulary. In academic writing, we use specific words. For example, instead of saying a lot, you can use words like many or several.
Exactly, and you should avoid slang. Words like cool or awesome are great for speaking with friends, but not for academic writing.
Here's a tip. If you want to use more formal vocabulary, you can look up synonyms. For instance, instead of saying get, you could say receive or obtain.
That's a great tip, Emma, but we also need to be careful with grammar. Academic writing has to be clear, so you must use correct grammar like subject-verb agreement.
Yes, like saying she writes papers, not she write papers. Grammar mistakes can confuse readers.
Another basic rule is punctuation. Make sure you use capital letters for the first word of every sentence and proper nouns like London or Emma.
And don't forget about periods, commas, and question marks. They help your writing make sense. For example, a sentence like "let's eat grandma" is very different from "let's eat grandma."
That's so true. Small details like punctuation can change the whole meaning.
We should also talk about structure. Academic writing is usually organized. Most papers or essays have 3 parts: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion.
Right. The introduction tells the reader what your writing is about. The body has all your main ideas, and the conclusion gives a summary.
And you can use linking words like first, next, and finally to make your writing flow better.
That's a good point, Emma. Linking words help the reader follow your ideas.
Okay, we've covered some basics: complete sentences, formal vocabulary, grammar, punctuation, and structure.
Yes, these are great starting points for anyone learning academic writing. Let's continue with more tips.
All right, let's dive deeper into how to improve academic writing skills. One key area is writing clearly and avoiding repetition.
That's a great point, Emma. When you repeat the same word or idea too many times, your writing can seem boring or confusing.
Exactly. Instead of repeating the same word, use synonyms or rephrase your sentence. For example, instead of writing "this book is important," "this book teaches us a lot," you could say, "this book is important because it provides valuable lessons."
Another way to avoid repetition is by using pronouns. So instead of saying "the teacher explained the topic," "the teacher gave examples," you can say "the teacher explained the topic and gave examples."
That's a good tip. Pronouns like he, she, it, and they help your writing flow more naturally. But make sure it's always clear what the pronoun refers to.
Yes, clarity is so important. Speaking of clarity, let's talk about paragraphs. A good academic paragraph has one main idea.
Right, each paragraph should focus on just one point. Start with a topic sentence, which tells the reader what the paragraph is about.
Then, add supporting sentences. These give more information or examples to explain your main idea.
For example, if your topic sentence is "exercise is important for good health," your supporting sentences might say, "Exercise helps reduce stress." It also improves heart health and keeps your body strong.
That's a great example, Emma, and don't forget to end your paragraph with a concluding sentence. It should summarize the main idea or connect to the next paragraph.
Yes, like saying, "Overall, exercise is essential for both physical and mental health. That wraps up the paragraph nicely.
Another thing to remember is to use formal tone and avoid personal opinions unless asked. For instance, instead of saying, "I think this topic is interesting," you could say, "This topic is interesting because it explores new ideas."
Absolutely, academic writing should sound objective, not personal. Use facts, research, or examples to support your points.
And if you include information from other sources, always give credit. This is called citing your sources.
Good point, Max. If you don't cite your sources, it's called plagiarism, which is using someone else's ideas or words without permission.
That's serious. To avoid it, use phrases like "according to the study," or as stated in the book, before you include information from other people's work.
And don't forget to include a bibliography or reference list at the end of your paper. It shows where all your information came from.
Another way to make your academic writing strong is to use examples. Examples help explain your ideas. For instance, if you're writing about technology, you could say, for example, "Smartphones allow people to communicate instantly no matter where they are."
That's true. Examples make your writing more interesting and easier to understand.
Also, let's talk about transitions. These are words or phrases that connect your ideas. They help the reader move smoothly from one thought to another.
Yes, words like however, therefore, on the other hand, and in addition are great for transitions. For example, you could write, "This method is effective, however, it is also time-consuming."
That's a great use of a transition, Emma. Another thing to consider is sentence variety. If all your sentences are the same length or structure, your writing might feel boring.
Exactly. You can mix short and long sentences. For example, the experiment was a success. It showed that light affects plant growth over time. This keeps the reader interested.
And Emma, what about passive and active voice? That's another important point in academic writing.
Good question, Max. In academic writing, passive voice is often used. For example, instead of saying, "The scientist discovered the cure," you can say, "The cure was discovered by the scientist."
Passive voice sounds more formal, but don't overuse it. Active voice is clearer and more direct, so it's still important in many cases.
That's a good balance, Max. We've covered a lot here. Avoiding repetition, writing clear paragraphs, using formal tone, citing sources, and even sentence variety.
Yes, these are all great tools to improve academic writing. Let's continue with even more helpful tips.
Now that we've talked about the basics and some intermediate tips, let's go deeper into making your academic writing more polished. A key area we should focus on is planning your writing.
Great point, Emma. Many people start writing without a clear plan, which can make their ideas feel unorganized.
Exactly. Before you write, spend time brainstorming. Ask yourself questions like, what is my main idea? And what do I want to explain? Write down your ideas in a list or a mind map.
After brainstorming, organize your ideas into an outline. An outline helps you see the structure of your writing before you start.
That's right. For example, in an essay, your outline could have 3 sections: the introduction, the body with 2 or 3 main points, and the conclusion. Under each section, write notes about what you'll include.
Outlines are a great way to stay focused. But Emma, what about when people feel stuck? What if they have writer's block?
Good question, Max. Writer's block happens to everyone. One way to overcome it is to start with a small part of your writing, like a paragraph or an example, instead of trying to write everything at once.
That's smart. Also, don't worry about making everything perfect on the first try. Just get your ideas down and you can edit later.
Speaking of editing, let's talk about proofreading. This is one of the most important steps in academic writing.
Definitely, proofreading means checking your writing for mistakes. Look for grammar errors, spelling mistakes, and unclear sentences.
A helpful tip is to take a break before proofreading. After some time away from your work, it's easier to notice mistakes.
And read your writing out loud. Hearing the sentences can help you find places where they don't sound right.
Another tip is to use tools like spell check or grammar check, but don't rely on them completely. They can miss some mistakes or suggest changes that aren't correct.
That's true. Asking someone else to read your work can also be helpful. They might notice things you missed.
And while editing, pay attention to formatting. Academic writing often follows specific rules for font size, spacing, and margins. Check your teacher's or institution's guidelines.
Great advice, Emma. Another thing to watch for is unnecessary words. Academic writing should be clear and concise.
Yes, for example, instead of saying due to the fact that, you can simply say because. Shorter sentences are easier to read.
And avoid filler words like actually, basically, or kind of. They don't add meaning and can make your writing less formal.
That's true. Another tip is to use specific examples or data to support your points. For instance, instead of saying many people like reading, you could say a recent survey showed that 75% of students read for enjoyment.
Specific details make your writing stronger and more convincing. And don't forget about tone. Academic writing should be formal but not too complicated.
That's a great point. Some people try to use very difficult words to sound smart, but this can make their writing hard to understand.
Exactly. It's better to write simply and clearly. For example, instead of saying the utilization of this methodology was implemented, you can say this method was used.
Another way to make your writing clear is by avoiding overly long sentences. If a sentence is too long, break it into two shorter ones.
Yes, and don't forget to use punctuation to guide the reader. Commas, periods, and other punctuation marks are like road signs for your writing.
Absolutely, Max. Let's also talk about critical thinking. Academic writing isn't just about sharing facts, it's about analyzing and explaining them.
That's right. When you write, don't just say this happened. Explain why it happened, how it happened, or what it means.
For example, if you're writing about climate change, don't just say temperatures are rising. Explain why this is happening and what the effects are.
And support your analysis with evidence. Use data, studies, or expert opinions to back up your points.
Exactly. And always stay neutral. Avoid using emotional language like "this is the worst problem ever." Instead, write something like "this is a significant challenge that requires urgent attention."
Good tip. Emma, let's also talk about reviewing feedback. If your teacher or classmates give you comments, use them to improve your work.
Yes, feedback is a great learning tool. Even if the comments are critical, don't take them personally. Use them to make your writing better.
So true. Writing is a skill that improves with practice and feedback.
And that's a perfect way to wrap up, Max. We've covered so much today: planning, proofreading, clarity, critical thinking, and using feedback.
Yes, and all these tips will help you become a confident academic writer.
Thanks for joining us today. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe to our channel and share it with your family and friends.
We'd love to hear your thoughts too. Leave a comment and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover next.
Goodbye and happy writing.
Goodbye, everyone.